I would say that today on intellectual property rights, certainly not the way it is in the West yet, but they have China has a real intense desire to bring it up to world standards. I'm familiar, for example, with this an intellectual property court that has been established in several major cities. I happen to have visited and spent some time at the intellectual court in Shanghai, and they take their work very seriously, and there's great pressure from the Chinese communities to have a very high standard of intellectual property rights, because you can't have innovation, which is what they're pushing, if you don't have intellectual property rights. I mean, that's just so. And there are ways to protect today. So when I first started my advisory with major companies, which goes back more than 10 years, so 12, 13 years, at the beginning of that period, protecting intellectual property was overwhelmingly the first issue.
Yeah.
Second issue is how do you deal with corruption? And today, just to fast forward, those two issues are not off the table, but corruption has been dramatically reduced. So it's really not a problem anymore. It may come up in some circumstance, but it's really not the problem at all. And intellectual property rights has made enormous progress. One important factor, if you want to think about China, how to deal in the market, and that is that what is your metric?
Mm-hmm.
And when I worked with companies of different sizes, except for the very big ones, this wouldn't apply quite the same way. But the metric I use is if your China venture would be an independent company and go public, what would the market cap of that entity be? And that's a more important criterion than what its revenues or profits would be. And it has to do with structure. And one of the keys to it, to make it work, is that when technologies when technologies are put into a venture in China, that the local venture, the local Chinese company, and now it can be even majority owned by a foreign company in most cases, 50-50, or you say it's a minority, will that Chinese venture have the opportunity to then take that technology and develop it on its own? And if it doesn't, it will erode the market value. But if it has that capability, then the value could be very substantial and grow very fast, because China now has several new boards like NASDAQ or early stage company boards that are coming to raise capital for smaller companies. So that's another factor that China is occurring, these opportunities to raise capital. And for some companies to raise capital, if they showed they'd had 2 or 3 joint ventures with different foreign technology companies, each bringing a world-class technology, no matter how small the niche, that will enhance their ability to get capital. Now, the counter argument that I get all the time is that, well, if I give those rights to the Chinese company, they may cannibalize and start taking my markets in Latin America or Europe or wherever. And by contract, you can deal with that, but maybe not totally. And so what I then do with a company, and this is with, again, medium-sized or smaller companies, is we know what their current market cap is if they're public, or if they're not, what the latest round of the valuation was through investors.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do some analysis, and oftentimes I can show that their 50% of the China venture, if the China venture then starts cannibalizing the rest of the world, their 50% will be significantly higher in value than 100% of what they have outside, because of the nature of the Chinese market.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at business as your primary test is market capitalization, or the value of your company, which from an economic point of view should be your only consideration. Now, there are stockholder, corporate social values, and all sorts of other things we're dealing with today. But if you look at it from a pure economic point of view, the whole activity should be to maximize market cap and value, as tested in a public market or an M&A market or whatever. And oftentimes you can show that a smaller percentage of the Chinese market, because of the strength of the Chinese financial markets, which perhaps have elevated pricing, but nonetheless, it's real. Companies
Yeah.
trade at those levels. You can really see a very high leverage in terms of the the percentage of what the value of your share of the Chinese entity in your technology that you gave into this venture be a very high percentage, and it's on some occasions even more than the totality of what you have outside.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of analysis that are important to do when you deal with China.